Hello, fellow YouTubers, Brett Prepper here. So I was just going to do this, and I thought, maybe you guys want to know how I do bone broth. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how I do bone broth. So what I have here is a bag of bones from my steer. I had an Angus beef that I just got delivered. It was a smaller one, but I had him cut me up some bones. And then I bag them in Ziplocs to be able to make my bone broth. So I take one of these and I put it in my 22-quart roasting pan. And then fill it with water, of course. Of course, water. Now you can put your onion skins and things like that in it, which I did on these, but you don't have to. I then turn it up to 400 while I'm watching it. So as long as I'm up, I put it at 400. When I know I'm going to go to bed, I turn it down to 250 and I let it go overnight. So it's got to go almost 24 hours, or at least 24 hours. And I just let it cook down. So whenever I'm up, it's up to 400. When I'm sleeping, it's down to 250. And so then I cook it down really, really far so that the bones are starting to show out of it. So it gets really, really thick. And I take that and I put it in the fridge overnight. And then you get a nice thick layer. And I'm sorry I don't have a picture of that. But you get a nice thick layer of any grease. And you can just scoop that off. You can set it aside in your freezer. And you can clean it up and use it as tallow to cook with, or you can throw it away, your choice. I clean mine up because I'm frugal. And then what I do is I take that broth, and if it's not thick enough, I'll cook it down a little more. And then I bag it up in these cheap storage Ziplocs. And the reason I do cheap storage Ziplocs, and this time I have 4 of them. So these 4 is 22 quarts of bone broth. But I'm going to freeze dry it. You could put this in your freezer and break pieces off. It's 1/8 of a cup to make a cup of bone broth. Freeze dried, it's going to be a little different. But then that's why I go with the cheap Ziplocs. I just pull the bags off. Just rip them right off. And then I freeze dry them. So that's 2. It's cold. Hope everyone's doing good today. We finally got rain. Can't believe it. Our lake is pretty much dry, and we've been praying for rain. We actually got 6 inches in one day, and it filled up our lake by 4 feet. But we're still way, way, way down. Probably, I would say 90% down. It's just been really bad here in Texas, in the hill country. But it filled my well back up, so I'm happy. So there we go. And then I'm going to put this in the freeze dryer. I've also got here, just because you don't ever want to run your freeze dryer empty or not every tray filled, this is liver. So I take the beef liver. I'm not a big liver fan. I take the beef liver and I poach it and just simmer it for like 20 minutes. And then I grind it up in the food processor, put it in the bags, smush it out, and then freeze it. And then once it's freeze dried, I'll grind it up in the food processor again. And that'll be for the dogs. Just remember, if you're feeding your dog's liver, unless they're on a raw food diet, you cook it. And you never give them more than 10% of their food replacement per week. So never more than 10%. So I guess I'm saying that wrong. So they can have it one day, 10% out of a week. Because liver can cause them issues, but it's a really nice treat. And 10% is quite a bit. You know, you can give them a little bit every day, you know, depending on the size, their weight. But you can give them, like, you know, it all depends what kind of dog you have, how much you give them. Take 10% of their food for one day, and they can have that once a week. Divide it up every day. You don't have to just give it to them once a week. You can give a little bit to them every single day. So let me go ahead and get this in the freeze dryer, and then I'll be back when it's done. So to close out this video, let's talk about results. So this is the content of 22 quarts of bone broth. That's it. Maybe 3 cups. That made 80 cups of bone broth. So 1 tablespoon is equal to 2 cups of broth. And of course, you always write it on here. I still got to write the date on here, but it is July of 2024. And so if I want 2 cups of bone broth, I use 1 tablespoon. If I want 1 cup, I use half a tablespoon. That's why I like to cook mine down until it's almost a thick paste, and then freeze dry it. Where'd it go? Fudge cake. There was a jar with a hunk of bone broth in it. Oh, it's right there. There is one thing to be aware of, that if you put it too thick on your freeze dryer trays, you can get clumping that's really hard to separate. I use a blender. Be careful on what you choose to use, because I have broken blenders before. I have a pretty good one now. It's really old, but it's a good one. And then also remember, if you're going to put bone broth in something like this with a lid, what's going to happen is it's going to get moisture back in it. So I will have to use this pretty quickly, which I'm going to use today. And it's like a sponge. So this would be like 4 cups of bone broth. This is the liver, how it turned out. So it turned out to nice crumbles. And you can just take a little bit of that, whatever the measurement is for your animal. 10% of their dog food once a week, and you can scoop it out and add a little water to it. I'm going to change these lids out because this is going to be in here for a while, and this I'm going to use, but I had dirty lids, so I had to wash them all. Alright folks, if you have any questions, please feel free to check out below and ask them. Also, thank you for all my new subscribers. I appreciate it. And I appreciate everyone, and thank you for the welcome back. Blessings.